All episodes of A Trial by Podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only. Much to their parents' dismay, neither host is a lawyer, journalist, or investigator. Just two people with microphones and Wi-Fi. All actions discussed are alleged, and all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. For the full legal mumbo-jumbo, check the show notes.
She told her lawyer in plain and unambiguous words that if anything ever happened to her, he shouldn't assume it was an accident. She said this in October of 1986. 5 weeks later, Helle Crafts was dead, and the man who killed her had done something so methodical, so grotesque in its logic, that investigators would spend months piecing together what little was left of Helle. It took weeks for her loved ones to even accept that she was missing. There were so many benign explanations for where she had gone. She was a Pan Am flight attendant after all. But as more time went by, her friends knew that Helle would never leave her kids for so long. They knew something was wrong, but they had no idea how horrific an ending her story would have. This is the story of a woman who saw the danger coming and said so out loud. It's the story of a killer who believed that if there was no body, there could be no crime. And it's the story about the forensic science that proved him catastrophically wrong. Welcome back to the pod, everybody. I am your host, Kelsey, and you have been hearing a lot of Taylor lately.
Hello, guys.
We just finished recording. I think it's probably going to be part 2 of the Springfield 3, and we're right back at it. Taylor's got Uber Eats on the way, or DoorDash, sorry. You're a DoorDash girl.
Your girl doesn't Uber Eats.
Yeah, so sorry. And I've got a Bloody Mary, or as Taylor would say,
cold soup.
Cold soup. I've got cold soup with vodka in it. So here we are. And it's a nice Sunday afternoon. Yeah, I don't think I've got a lot of biz nasty to discuss today. So I think we're going to dive right into the story. So we are talking about Helle Crafts, the murder of Helle Crafts. And this is one that is going to have a couple of twists and turns, I think. Ooh. This is one of the most shocking stories I've ever read. So I would say prepare yourself a little bit now. Okay?
Am preparing.
Okay. So Helle Lork Nielsen was born on July 7th, 1947 in Charlottenlund, Denmark. And I'm doing my best with the pronunciations. I don't speak Danish. Is Danish a language?
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest.
Either way, don't speak it. So this is a small coastal town just north of Copenhagen. And she grew up there and eventually made her way into the world of international aviation, becoming a flight attendant for Pan American World Airways, better known as Pan Am. And I, obviously not alive during this time, but from the movies, there ain't nothing more glamorous than being a Pan Am flight attendant in the 70s.
Okay, that's where I've heard it. I'm like, I've heard Pan Am before.
Oh, for sure. This was I don't know what happened to them, or, obviously they shut down, but in the 70s and the early 80s, Pan Am was the airline. It was the one. It was very glamorous, and it was pretty much the airline carrier that symbolized post-war American ambition and the promise of the new jet age. To work for Pan Am as a flight attendant was to live a genuinely international life. Frankfurt one week, London the next week, layovers in cities that most people never got to see in real lives. They only saw it on maps or in movies. And this was not an easy job to get. Pan Am's hiring process in the 70s and 80s, in my opinion, was more similar to probably Hugh Hefner's process for looking for a new Playboy bunny than it is to any airline's current hiring process. It was very much about what you looked like. They were notoriously rigid about the appearance of the female flight attendants. And I don't even think they really had male flight attendants back in the day because, of course, men had to be the pilots because they're so much smarter.
Right.
And women had to be the flight attendants.
And you want to be served by a woman.
Exactly. Yes. But she has to be hot.
Oh, beautiful.
She has to be hot to serve you.
Tiny waist.
Yeah, tiny waist. And specifically, these requirements enforced were that a woman had to be between 5'3" and 5'9". You could not weigh more than 130 pounds, which, by the way, 130 pounds on a 5'3" person versus a 5'9" person, very different.
Yeah.
But yeah, you cannot weigh more than 130 pounds. And once you hit like your mid 30s, you're fucking out of there. Like you're donezo. You're retired. Goodbye.
Are they going to pay for that retirement?
I think, they had a little something going on, but mainly it was okay because at that point you were, of course, married with children and it was time for you to become a housewife.
Oh, right. I forgot.
Because your children at that point, all 7 of them, they're getting a little older, They've got a lot of sports for you to take them to. But of course, you can't drive them there because women shouldn't drive. But once hired, the stewardesses, which is what they were called at the time, they were subjected to regular weigh-ins to ensure compliance with these standards. And if you weighed over 130 pounds, immediate grounding. Like, done. You're not getting on your next flight if you're over the limit. And just to be very clear, this weight limit has nothing to do with like the weight limits of the flights, obviously. They have a lot of wiggle room with even a full flight of passengers and lots of luggage, whatever. Not that anyone would think that was the case, but just in case there's a couple dummies out there listening, we love a good dummy. We love a nice dummy, okay? This is one of the things me and Emily, someone got mad at us for saying that back in the day, but we love a good dummy, dude. I truly do. As long as you're a good person.
Right.
A dummy is a fun person. I like it. So for all the dummies out there, this is strictly about aesthetics. And here's the thing is, as recently as 1986, attendants returning from maternity leave were required to lose at least 1.5 pounds per week until they returned to their hiring weight. And you had to return to your hiring weight within 20 weeks or you would face termination.
The bounce back had to be in less than half a year?
Yes, 20 weeks. And that whole time, if you lose less than 1.5 pounds per week, you're on pause until you like keep it back up. You have to lose at least 1.5 pounds per week, if not more, in order to lose all of the baby weight in those 20 weeks to reach your hiring.
How did they get away with this, with these rules?
Well, that's the thing is now you can't because there are laws against discrimination like this.
I'm like, come on.
And still there's these stupid bitches out there these days being like, we don't want laws against this stuff. It's the stupid bitches that think it doesn't affect them. And guess what? Probably doesn't affect you because you're probably not cool enough to be a flight attendant if you're saying that kind of shit. But I digress. Beyond the numbers, it wasn't just about height and weight. It was also about your face. You had to have, quote, symmetrical features and clear skin, end quote. And I just got to tell you, on that alone, I'm fucking out. Like, I'm not making it.
Not my clear skin.
Clear skin and symmetrical features? No, for sure, the 2 sides of my face, they're cousins. They're not sisters. But they were just like, no, you're just basically, they're like, taking interviews like, nah, not symmetrical enough.
They said, is that a breakout this week?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No. And they could also dismiss a flight attendant for getting married. And this was a policy that kind of reduced these women who were very accomplished, very intelligent, often multilingual women who managed medical emergencies and, kept service going and took care of emergencies at 35,000 feet. And it's just kind of like, well, you're a walking advertisement for the glamour of Pan Am, and you having kids and like having a little bit of baby weight, it's really not good for the brand.
No.
And for some women, putting up with this level of misogyny, it was worth it in order to live a glamorous jet-setting lifestyle. And look, I'm not hating on these women for taking this job. Like, if you could do it. If anything, I am feeling for them for having to deal with this absurdity.
Yeah.
No hate to them. Don't hate the playa, hate the game. Okay? And these women were the playas. And Helle was a motherfucking playa. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
And this lifestyle, it truly suited her. She was multilingual. She was adaptable. And by all accounts, she was just someone who moved through the world with ease and competence. And she just was very deserving of this job, and she loved to travel. She loved this job, and she really held up the glamorous side of it in the exact way that Pan Am, I think, was looking for at the time. And it was through that same world of planes and terminals and international routes that she met a man named Richard Crafts sometime in the mid-1970s. He was an airline pilot, and he eventually worked for Eastern Airlines, which, again, no longer exists. But he came with a resume that impressed on paper. He was a former pilot for the Marines, and he had reportedly flown missions in connection with CIA operations. So this guy's doing some important shit. And he was someone who carried himself with the authority of a person accustomed to being in charge of every situation. Now, he was nearly 10 years older than Helle, and associates who knew him described him as quiet, a bit introverted, occasionally charming, but with this sort of volatility underneath. A temper that surfaced usually when he felt control slipping out of his hands. He was very, very much about being in control. This becomes a problem, as we will see.
I'm sure.
Now, we'll kind of get into the details about this later. Richard was in a relationship when he met Helle. In fact, he was engaged.
Oh.
What they had started as very casual cheating on your fiance, but he broke off the engagement and it became much more serious.
I'm sorry, casual cheating on your fiance?
Yes, I think that's how he would frame it. Very casual cheating on you. There's a lot of cheating in this story. And a lot of it, the way it's described in like the source materials that I read is like, that's just what flight attendants and pilots were doing. They were all fucking.
Oh.
That's what they were doing back in the day.
Okay. Well, yeah, when you have, you make the women dress like dolls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then.
So this casual relationship becomes more serious. It was on and off for a while, but in 1975, Richard and Helle married, and they settled in Newtown, Connecticut, a quiet, prosperous town in Fairfield County where lawyers and executives and professionals lived on wooded plots of land and sent their children to fancy schools. From the outside, it looks like the exact kind of life that we are supposed to want. They're both successful. They're making a lot of money. They eventually have 3 children in very short succession. And Helle was really balancing her career, like the international flights, the long hours, the jet lag, going all over the world. She was balancing this very well with being a present and devoted mother. She loved nothing more than her children. Richard obviously was flying around the world too, and he even worked as a volunteer officer with the Newtown Police Department on the side. And we'll kind of get to why, but just something to be noted. And the reason for him working with the police department is in 1986, Eastern Airlines did this big cut to pilot salaries. I believe it was by 20%. I don't know why, but they're like, you guys are all making 20% less now. So he picked up this job on the side because he had been doing like a volunteer position with the police department, and then he picked up a part-time paid position just to bring in a little bit more money, which is interesting because even though he got a salary cut, like he was still making a lot of money.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to how much and everything. But depending on who you asked, Richard was a good neighbor, a reliable colleague, and a man worthy of his authority. He was very well respected by everyone he worked with. And again, he was a Marine pilot doing missions with the CIA. Like, this is a very established figure, I guess. Break.
For the Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary break. My cold soup.
Good soup.
So by the early 1980s, the marriage was starting to show what divorce attorneys would probably call irreconcilable differences, and what everyone else would probably refer to as like a slow motion car wreck type of situation. Richard began disappearing for long stretches for work, supposedly, though the reasons that he gave for being gone for so long, they grew harder and harder to account for. And Helle began to suspect that he was hiding something from her or someone. And according to some of her friends, she had at some point discovered that he had lied to her about a serious illness. So at one point, he did have cancer that went into remission. When they started like having marital issues, and I think the topic of divorce was floated, he reportedly claimed that his cancer had returned just to like try and stall any divorce proceedings. Like, you can't divorce me, I have cancer.
Oh, God.
But then she realized that he did not have cancer. And again, that's all allegedly. That is according to Helle's friends, like what Helle told them. But this wasn't the only secret he was keeping, and it wasn't what led to Helle wanting a divorce in the first place. In fact, it was a strange long-distance phone number on their household bill that finally cracked things open for her. Helle found it, and she saw this as out of place. Like, why is he calling this same number over and over, and it's so far away and all of these things? And so she did what any determined person would do, and she hired someone to follow her husband, whom she suspected of cheating.
A PI.
Yes. And this PI is the motherfucking MVP of this story, let me tell you. So Helle was aware, and she had been for some time, that Richard was likely having some casual sex and one-night stands outside of their marriage, you know, while he's out on work trips. Again, this was something that seemed to be very common in the airline industry at the time. Pilots, flight attendants, they're all, you know, they're staying overnight in cities together at the same hotels and whatever, and they're sleeping together. And it was pretty typical, and almost from the way these stories are told that I've read for this case, like, it seems like you should just expect it if you marry an airline pilot. Like, that's the way they were like describing it. I'm like, well, damn, I ain't marrying no pilot, I'll tell you that.
Sorry, ladies out there, if your husband's a pilot.
Yeah, and this is so long ago, I really don't. Here's the thing, guys, is my mom works in HR for an airline, and let me tell you, this shit would not fly nowadays. So don't worry too much. I think human resources has really just stomped on the sexual exploits of pilots and flight attendants.
I hope so.
I hope so. But yeah, so this was typical at the time. It seemed to be expected. And in fact, this, like I said, that's kind of how Helle and Richard's relationship started. He was engaged to another woman. Then they had this casual fling. The relationship progressed. He broke off the engagement with the other woman. But you know what they say, and by they, I mean I. Once a cheater, always a cheater.
I was going to say, how do you trust him?
Dude.
If, you know, he made you the other woman at some point.
Yeah. And guys, there are exceptions to what I'm going to say. But as a general rule of thumb, like, if someone's cheating with someone else, they're going to be cheating on you. That's the way that I look at it. Again, tons of exceptions to this rule. But like, as a general standard, I stand by that. Because and especially the girls who, like, they're cheating on their partner with you, or it could be guys too. Like, you know, You're dating a girl, she has a boyfriend or a husband or whatever. She's cheating on him with you. They break it off, and you just think that she's never going to do that to you. I don't get that.
Yeah.
But
because you can fix him.
And you know what? I'm sure there are scenarios out there where that has happened. And so don't come in my DMs saying that happened to you and we're stupid. I know it's possible. I'm just saying overall, that's a rare scenario probably. Someone's going to get mad at me, but that's okay.
That's all right.
So while Helle and Richard seemed to have this kind of unspoken don't ask, don't tell policy when it came to his exploits, Richard's long unexplained absences, they indicated something more serious. This wasn't just, he's having one-night stands while he's on a work trip. He's making up work trips that don't exist, and he's gone for days at a time. That doesn't seem like a casual sex kind of thing.
No, he's having a full-blown affair.
Right. And while she could get over this abstract thought that maybe her husband has had a couple of one-night stands or like meaningless sex with other women, she was not going to sit by while he had a full-blown relationship with someone else. Not when this could be her opportunity to get out. Because this affair was only the latest wound in their marriage that had been bleeding for years. Richard was not just a cheating prick. He was an abusive one. Emotionally, allegedly physically, and financially. He was in control of all of their money. And because of that, he made Helle pay for every household bill and expense while he spent his own income on whatever he pleased. And this left Helle with no money to do fun extracurricular things, no money to save if she wanted to leave this marriage, nothing. It really put her in a position of, you're paying all the bills and paying for everything to take care of the children.
I'm sorry, what year is this again?
At this point, this is like early 80s.
Wasn't the whole thing then that the man is supposed to be taking care of everything in the house?
Yeah, but the misogyny leaves his body when he realizes that she can help pay for the bills. It's like me when, like, I need to move a piece of furniture and then my male romantic lead is there, and then I can say, you could do that easier than me, so I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Feminism leaves my body at that point.
Leaves my soul for a second.
Leaves my soul for a second. And that's what Richard was doing, except in a really abusive, controlling way in order to keep his wife, whom he controlled, unable to save money and leave their marriage if she ever wanted to.
So he's thinking 10 chess steps ahead.
Yes, this is, I think, a very common manipulation that occurs in abusive relationships, is the control over finances, because finances is one of the things that can really stop someone from getting out of a marriage, especially, but even also if there's children involved, things like that. And it was just a tool for control. And we know one thing about Richard: this man likes having control of everything. If you've been listening to our podcast for a while now, you know that looks can be deceiving. We hear it in stories all the time. But the same thing goes for your water. It looks clear, it has no smell, no taste, no warning signs whatsoever. But hiding inside your tap water right now could be lead, forever chemicals, microplastics, chlorine, contaminants that are linked to fatigue, hormone disruption, cognitive decline, and major health issues down the line. Standard filters let most of these contaminants walk right through. AquaTrue is a countertop purifier tested and certified to remove 84 contaminants using a patented 4-stage reverse osmosis system. There's no plumbing, no installation, and AquaTrue's been featured in Business Insider, Popular Science. It's been named the best countertop water filter by Good Housekeeping, and 98% of customers say that their water is cleaner, safer, and healthier. And that's a track record that you can take to court. Go to aquatrue.com and use promo code ATrialByPodcast for 20% off your purifier. It comes with a 30-day best tasting water guarantee or your money back. That's AquaTrue, AQUATRU.com. Promo code ATrialByPodcast. So she's working hard. She's flying these international routes. She's crossing time zones. She's managing the 3 children. She's holding the household together financially. And Richard is just coming and going as he pleased. He's disappearing for days at a time.
And she's staying acne-free and slim.
Yes.
During this whole thing.
Yep. So it wasn't just emotional neglect. It's not like he's just kind of ditching his wife for this other lady and just kind of leaving her be at home, try to figure it out. It seems that there was, of course, some alleged physical abuse and emotional abuse. Helle would show up around her friends with bruises on her face, and her explanations for where they came from never made any sense to any of her friends. And her friends often suspected that they came from Richard. Richard's controlling behavior and this occasional alleged physical abuse, compounded by his obsession with firearms, this heightened her fears considerably. She wanted out of this marriage, but she didn't know how to get out. She wanted out for a long time. She's miserable, but because of the financial situation and with the children, she didn't know how she was going to be able to leave this marriage and be able to take care of the children and all of this financially, because like they had a nanny and all of these other things. And her salary, yes, it was covering a lot of the bills, but there was no money left over. And she wasn't going to be able, she felt, to do it all on her own.
Yeah, she hasn't been able to save anything.
Right.
So.
And that's the thing is, the problem really was that wanting out and getting out cleanly in this type of situation, these were 2 very different things. Especially when the man that you're leaving has all these guns in the house. He works part-time for the police, and he's got this temper that as time is going on, he's not even like bothering to hide it anymore. But on top of fearing for her safety, she feared the outcome of the divorce in general. Like I said, she doesn't want Richard getting any of her hard-earned money. She feels like even if she keeps all her hard-earned money, she doesn't know how she's going to take care of the children on her own without a nanny and still, flying all over the world to support them. And she felt like she really needed something concrete to win this divorce in a way. And I know winning a divorce is kind of a silly statement. But sometimes it seems to be there's a winner and there's a loser. And she felt, in this day and age, at the time, the man is the winner in the divorce normally. And she just knew that this was not going to go over well. Unless she had proof that this divorce was not her doing, not her fault. What could that proof be? Proof of his affair. So she chose to hire a PI. Keith, it's spelled like Mayo, but I believe it's pronounced Mayo, Keith Mayo, but I kind of want to call him Mayo. What do we want to go with?
I don't know. I know someone that has the last name Mayo.
Okay, so
and it's pronounced Mayo.
One of the other like things that I listened to, they were saying Mayo, but I think we're gonna go with Mayo. PI Mayo.
It. I mean, we like Keith, so
yeah, we like Keith. Like Mayo is the MVP of this story, like I said. So she hires Mayo, and he had no difficulty at all confirming her suspicions. Richard Crafts was having an affair with a flight attendant named Nancy Dodd, based out of Middletown, New Jersey. And Mayo delivered photographic evidence pretty quickly on to Helle. And the marriage at this point was over in everything but the paperwork. Richard would later nonchalantly admit to investigators that he also had a second girlfriend as well, another Eastern Airlines flight attendant, and that, you know what, it's just the nature of his job. It just presented him with abundant opportunities to cheat.
I mean, he couldn't resist himself.
A grown-ass man couldn't control himself. But she's got this photographic evidence now. And what she didn't really fully understand, and I guess what she probably couldn't have even imagined, was the degree to which Richard Crafts intended to prevent divorce from ever happening. He made clear through his rage and his silence that he did not intend to let this divorce happen because he did not intend to pay any alimony or child support, which in this case, especially with proof of infidelity, but because they have 3 children in general, he's probably going to have to pay her some alimony and stuff.
And he makes more.
Yes. So he did not intend on doing this. He did not intend on dividing up their assets. He did not intend to give Helle what she was legally and morally entitled to. And she told her friends during this time that she was afraid of him. She told the divorce attorney that she hired, Diane Anderson, that if she disappeared, Richard was responsible. Anderson later described this as an unusual comment, and she told other people in her life the same thing, in almost the same words. She says basically, like, to multiple different friends, if something happens to me, don't assume it was an accident. Or like, if something happens to me and it looks like an accident, it wasn't. Like, that's what she's telling her friends.
It sounds like she was already scared for her life.
She was. And she said it almost matter-of-factly, which is somehow more chilling than if she had said it, like, in tears or in fear. Like, she was just, like, very nonchalantly, like, well, if something happens to me, it was Richard type of thing. And Taylor, I can't tell you, I could list a handful of other stories of domestic violence where it's the same thing, where they've said, I think he's going to kill me or something is going to happen to me, and it ends up happening. And I can't imagine being that scared, and it is chilling to me to think about.
And she probably felt like she really couldn't report it or ask for help because he worked for the police.
Exactly. And we're going to see when she goes missing, even her friends felt like they couldn't report that she was missing because he was working with the police. So on the evening of November 18th, 1986, Helle returned home from an overseas flight from Frankfurt, West Germany, landing at JFK International Airport in New York. And I always like to point out whenever this comes up, they say West Germany because at the time, Germany was like 2 countries. It was West Germany and East Germany, and there was the Berlin Wall, and it was a whole thing. And I just when I read Frankfurt, West Germany, I'm like, that's just so funny to me. Like, I forgot that was the thing.
I did too.
But she lands in New York and she carpools back to Connecticut with 2 fellow flight attendants. One of them was her friend Trudy Horvath, and they arrived at the house on Newfield Lane sometime after 6:30 in the evening. And at this point in the night, there was a snowstorm already moving into the area. And it was this is November 18th, so this is one of those early Connecticut winters that arrives fast and harsh and seems to never end, like lasts for, it feels like an eternity. So Helle gets out of the car. They're dropping her off at the house. And when she looks towards the house, she turns around to her friend Trudy before going inside. And she turns around and she says, oh, Richard's home. Just like oh my God, I got to deal with
he's in the
this
house.
fucking bastard. And it's one of those things where in the moment you're just like, sorry, girl. But in hindsight, it's chilling because this is the last time Trudy ever sees Helle alive again. And actually, those were the last words anyone outside of that house ever heard Helle say alive. We know Richard Crafts was inside the house. Now, their nanny, 19-year-old Dawn Marie Thomas, she was not at the house this day. She was out for the evening, which meant that Richard had the privacy to confront the wife that was leaving him. Investigators would later reconstruct from the physical evidence that Richard struck Helle twice in the head with a blunt force instrument that night, killing her relatively quickly, if not immediately. The prosecution's theory was that she may have been in the bedroom, possibly changing the sheets when he attacked her from behind. She was just 39 years old, still jet-lagged from a transatlantic flight, home barely an hour. And we'll get into the details of what evidence they used to construct that theory in just a little bit. But I want to kind of go into what happens after this, because obviously the only people that knew what happened in that home at this point it's just Richard at this point. And the next morning, November 19th, Richard loaded the 3 children and their nanny into the car and drove them to his sister's house in Westport, telling her the trip was necessitated by the storm. I don't know why they would have to go or leave their house because of a winter storm. I don't know why, but that was his cover story to the sister was, oh, we're going to come visit because of this storm. So I don't know if he was like, our power went out or what he's saying. But his sister, of course, is like, well, where's Helle?
Yeah,
why isn't she with you guys?
Where's your wife? You
But
have the nanny.
He didn't really have any sort of good explanation. We don't really know exactly what he told her, but it seemed that the sister was like, that doesn't really make sense, whatever he did say. So he takes the kids and the nanny to the sister's house, but he returns to his house. So again, what the cover story wasn't exactly clear in the source materials, but he is getting the nanny and the children out of the house. That's what we know.
Yeah.
So he can go clean up. So on November 20th, just 2 days after Helle had been dropped off at home by her colleagues, one of her closest friends and colleagues called Richard to ask where she was. Helle had been scheduled to work that day and hadn't shown up, which was entirely out of character for a woman who took her professional responsibilities very seriously. She just didn't show up for a flight she was supposed to be on. Richard told the friend that Helle had taken her flight bags and left the previous morning. So she had a different flight yesterday. She left for work yesterday. And this friend was like, well, no, because I know that she was supposed to be on this flight. And there's no record of her being scheduled for a different flight. That doesn't make any fucking sense. And so when it starts to become clear, because I think the friend gets off the phone with him and looks into this, at that point, when he realizes she's not really buying this explanation of oh, she's just out flying for work, he simply comes up with a new one. And he explained that actually he had heard from Helle since, and her plans had just changed unexpectedly because her mother had fallen ill in Denmark. So Helle had flown there to take care of her. And to back this up, he's like, well, her car should be in the employee lot at the airport. She took her bags and she drove to the airport. I thought she was going there for work, but she ended up canceling work stuff because she had to go to Denmark to take care of her sick mom. Again, this doesn't make any sense because the friend knew that if she had to do that, she would have let her work know that she wasn't showing up for her flight. And yeah, you could argue, well, maybe she was in a rush to, get to this flight to go visit her mom. It's her place of work is the fucking airport. She could have let someone know while she was there.
There also would be flight tickets and a record of her getting on the flight.
Yeah. So this, again, it's not really adding up. So her friend, she goes to the parking lot to check and Helle's car is there. So she's like, okay, well, maybe she must have flown somewhere. Her car's here. But she peeks inside the window of the car. And through the window, she sees a pair of boots. And these were the same boots that Helle had been wearing when Trudy dropped her off 2 nights earlier, which is a little bit odd if you think she wore those boots inside. But again, not odd enough to make you think anything crazy. Now, Helle's car sat in that parking lot for 3 days without being touched. No one could reach Helle by phone. No one was able to get a hold of her. Her friends consulted one another, calling each other, like, have you talked to Helle? And they're growing increasingly alarmed. Eventually, one of them reached out to Helle's mother in Denmark directly because they're like, this is so weird that once she got there, she wouldn't call and say she's not coming into work.
Yeah.
You know? So they're like, this is so odd. Well, let's make sure she got to her mom's house safely. It takes them a few days because they don't just have Helle's mom's phone number. And it's not like you can just Google someone's phone number, like find them on Facebook back in this day. So they finally tracked down her phone number. I don't exactly know how.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how did they get this number?
I don't know. I don't know if maybe she was like an emergency contact or something, or if they like got it out of Richard somehow. I don't think they got it out of Richard because of what happens, but I'm not sure. So they call Mrs. Nielsen, Helle's mother in Denmark, and they're like, hey, so sorry. We heard you are so ill and that Helle's there to take care of you. Can we speak with her? And Mrs. Nielsen's like, I don't know what you're talking about. She's not here. I'm not sick. And actually, I haven't even spoken to Helle in weeks. In fact, she has no plans to visit me until April of 1987, which was almost 6 months away.
Richard's very bad at coming up with stories.
Dude, and this is one of those cases where, like, he does some stuff that's, like, kind of smart, and then he does some stupid. I'm like, you idiot. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess he probably just thought that they wouldn't be able to, like, get her phone number, but
Or thought they wouldn't look into it that much.
I guess. Dude, okay, so I said that Keith Mayo, the PI, is the MVP. I think it's her friends, too. These friends are the only reason this case was solved. These are fucking ride or die bitches right here.
It sounds like it.
Dude, they are ride or die bitches. These are friends that we should all hope we have if something bad happens to us.
Well, and they're also probably the ones that she, said that she was already worried about her husband.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yes, this is the same group of friends. So, yeah, her mom's like, I haven't even spoken to her in a few weeks. So this explanation that Richard had been offering had just been eliminated entirely. And in the weeks that followed, he starts offering up new explanations. Now, when exactly he offers up some of these, I don't know, because eventually police do go and talk to him, but it's a few weeks in, and the first story he gives the police is the same thing about her mom being sick and Helle going to visit her. Now, I do not know if at that point the friends had already talked to Helle's mother and just never said anything to Richard because at this point they knew he was lying, or if he just told the police the same story, even though he knew the friends knew it was bullshit. I don't know. But the timeline of like when he says this stuff is just very ambiguous, but we know that he's like, well, she might have gone to the Canary Islands with a friend. I just don't know where she went. I've been trying to get a hold of her. She told me she had to work, but obviously she's not at work. Then he starts accusing her of running off with another man and abandoning her children. So this is the road that we're going to go down. We'll kind of go through like what he says. It was hard for me to line up the timeline of like his interactions with police and then the interactions with the friends of like who knew what first and when. But the point is that not one of his rotating explanations was consistent with anything that anyone who knew Helle knew about who she was. Like, she was not the type of person to just like up and leave her kids. Now, in the first few days, her friends did try to find any possible benign explanation for her leaving. Like, and I think that it's one of those things, it's a natural human reaction, because if she hadn't left of her own accord, well, then something very bad has happened. So, like, I think it's like human nature. Your mind is trying to find like the best possible explanation for her just being gone.
They don't want to believe something happened to their friend.
Right. And one of the things that they thought for a bit was that maybe she had left because she was scared of Richard. And she was hiding from Richard for a bit. But after a few days, they started to think like, she would let us know though, right?
I mean that, and if she was afraid of this man, she's not leaving her kids there.
Well, that's the thing. And they start to realize something is wrong here. And what really did it for them was when Thanksgiving came and went and she was not home with her kids. And they're like, absolutely the fuck not. She would not miss a holiday with her children. She was not the type of woman who just abandoned her family. Like, this was just, and she wouldn't leave her friends to just wonder what happened to her. She would tell them what happened because she knew that they wouldn't, if she was hiding out from Richard, they're not going to go tell Richard where she is, you know? So her friend and colleague, Rita Buonanno, was one of the first people who recognized that something horrible had happened here. She said that less than a month before Helle disappeared, on the phone, Helle told her the same thing she had told others, quote, "If you ever hear that I've been in an accident or I'm missing, don't believe it," end quote. And Buonanno remembered those words. She did not let them go. And on December 1st, 1986, nearly 2 weeks after Helle had been last seen, she was formally reported missing to the Newtown Police Department. And while 2 weeks seems kind of like a long time to wait to report someone missing, there was a reason for this. Because, of course, we know that Richard was not a stranger to the police. He had been a volunteer officer with the department since 1982. And he took this role seriously enough that he had even purchased his own Ford Crown Victoria, which was the same model used by the Connecticut State Police, and outfitted it with radios, antennas, police lights, and sirens.
Oh.
Even though he was just a volunteer officer.
Oh, no, he's a weirdo.
What a fucking loser. Right?
Yeah.
What a loser. That is so weird. And also, your wife's paying all the bills and you're buying a fucking toy police car that's not even a real police car. Like, are you serious? And also, like, how is that legal? Like,
also, why did they let him do that?
I don't know. But like I said, in 1985, after Pan Am cut pilot salaries by almost 20%, he started that part-time job with the Southbury Police Department. So this is a different police department, but it's still nearby. And he was making $7 an hour. And he was attending investigation seminars on his own dime, like paying to go to them. It's one of those things where, were you trying to learn because you wanted to be a police officer when you're already a pilot who makes way more money and whatever? Or were you trying to learn
how to cover
what
stuff
investigators
up.
do so you can cover up what you would do a year later?
Most definitely.
So in his work at the police department, he was very highly regarded. The local police loved him, and they spent time, like he spent time with the other officers outside of work. Like, they were friends. And Helle's friends knew this, which is why they waited so long to report her. They felt like, on the very slim chance that Helle was just hiding from Richard or running away from the family, like from Richard, but running away in fear of her safety, they were worried that if they brought the police in, that they would just track her down and lead Richard straight to her because he's her husband, you know? So they first went to her divorce attorney before going to police, saying, basically, do you know anything? You know, if she's just fearing for her safety, maybe she got this attorney involved. And Anderson, the attorney, she had no clue where Helle was, but she was just as concerned as the friends because, remember, Helle had said the same thing to the divorce attorney. If something happens to me, it wasn't an accident. So at this point, she connects, the divorce attorney connects Helle's friends with the private investigator, Keith Mayo. They had been in contact because, of course, Keith Mayo's getting this evidence for the divorce. And Keith Mayo is fucking invested from the get-go.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, just from his interactions with Helle and what he's seen from Richard, he's like, oh, hell no. She did not just leave on her own. And I think he knew immediately that he had probably done something to her. So he starts looking into this, and once he has no fucking sign and no clue, there is no evidence of her flying anywhere, her car's in that lot, he realizes something very bad has happened and he's not going to find her on his own. So this is when Mayo himself walks into the Newtown Police Department to report Helle missing. And he told police very directly that he believed that whatever happened to Helle, it was at the hands of one of their own, Richard Crafts. Now, of course, the Newtown police didn't seem to take this very seriously at all.
Of course.
They classified the case as a routine missing persons report, and they told Mayo that Helle would probably turn up. They're like, she's going to turn up. They're having some domestic disputes.
It's been weeks at this point.
It's been 2 weeks when he reports her missing.
No, I'm saying like not that they waited so long. I mean, like the police are just like, oh, she'll probably turn up. It's only been weeks.
Yeah. No, she just got in a fight with her husband. She'll turn up. I know. I know. You guys should see the look on Taylor's face right now. I know, these stupid motherfuckers. So despite their assumption that Helle's absence was just of her own choice due to some sort of domestic dispute or something, they still seem to at least do the bare minimum of their jobs, thank God. And on December 4th, Newtown officers interviewed Richard. He was cooperative when police first approached him. He was agreeable, calm, collected. These were his fucking buddies, you know. He told them that he had last seen Helle on November 19th when she left to fly to Denmark to visit her sick mother. At this point, Richard is informed that, no, we've talked to Helle's mother, and she was never there. The mother was never sick. Helle was never planning to come there, and she hasn't spoken to her in weeks. And Richard is shocked. What do you mean she's not there? That's where she told me she was going.
Oh, he's an actor.
Putting on performance of a lifetime. And so he starts offering alternative suggestions on where she could be. Each time they spoke with Richard, his story of where she could be seemed to change. She's like, I don't know, she might be in the Canary Islands. And I don't know why Canary Islands, like I couldn't figure out, but that's just what keeps coming up. With a friend, it started with, she might be in the Canary Islands with a friend or with her lover. But of course, Richard didn't really have any information on who this lover was or could be, or any information about the affair or how he knew she was having an affair, because the affair didn't exist.
No.
Yeah. Now, the investigators noted the inconsistencies in Richard's various accounts, but they seemed to think that it's possible that she had just lied and left him, and that he simply had no idea where she was and was offering up these random explanations and like didn't really seem to care because the marriage was bad, not because he did something to her, you know? Mm-hmm. And at one point, Richard even submitted to a polygraph examination. And we talked about this in the Springfield 3 episode. Polygraphs, I don't want to say they mean nothing, but they cannot tell you for sure if someone is telling the truth or not. And the results, they seem to surprise some of the people involved in this case, like Helle's friends, because the results showed no deception. One examiner wrote in his report of the polygraph examination, quote, "He does not know where his wife is," end quote. And that's a bold-ass claim for something that measures a butt clench. You know what I mean? And if you don't get that joke, listen to the Springfield 3 episodes.
The faith that they probably had in polygraph tests at this time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Too much.
Too much. Now, spoiler alert, he did, of course, know where his wife was, and he was simply able to beat this polygraph. Because really, all polygraphs do is measure physical indicators of stress. And Richard was very good at keeping calm in stressful situations. He had trained as a Marine. He reportedly flew these covert missions for the CIA. And he spent years in high-pressure positions that rewarded self-control as a pilot and as a part-time fucking baby cop, you know?
Oh, yeah, his self-proclaimed police officer.
Yeah. So still, these polygraph results, of course, reinforce the department's lack of urgency. But luckily, the case started drawing attention elsewhere because on December 17th, about a month after Helle's disappearance, the Danbury News-Times ran the first news story on the disappearance. The headline read, quote, "Police seek missing Newtown woman," end quote. Keith Mayo was quoted directly in the article saying that he did not believe that she had left on her own, and he criticized harshly the sluggishness of the police response. Helle's friends were also pressuring investigators at this time, calling repeatedly, insisting something more be done. So the combined noise of the media attention and the persistent advocacy from Helle's circle eventually reached past the Newtown Police Department and up to the Connecticut Attorney General's office. So they said, oh, you ain't doing shit? We're going to go to your bosses, pretty much. Like, we're going to go above your heads.
Man, these girls are putting in work.
Dude, these are ride or die bitches, and these are all the friends that we should have. Like, I think if something happened to me, my friends would be doing the same shit, and I know if something happened to one of my friends, I would be camped out on this motherfucking... I would pitch a tent.
On his lawn.
On his lawn. I would pitch... And if he said I have to get off his property and calls the police, I would talk to the next door neighbors and pitch a tent on their lawn, and I'm sure they'll let me.
On the neighbor's lawn.
I'll be on the neighbor's lawn watching you with fucking binoculars, you little bitch. But... the case was transferred to the Connecticut State Police, specifically the Western District Major Crimes Unit. Now, unlike the Newtown Police, they had no relationship with Richard Crafts, and they agreed something was not right here. So on December 26, 1986, while Richard Crafts was vacationing in Florida with his children.
Well, your wife is missing.
Your wife has been missing for almost 6 weeks.
Even if you're getting a divorce, the mother of your children is missing.
And you're taking the kids on vacation to Florida? Are you fucking kidding me? Anyway, while he's on this vacation, it actually kind of worked out well because at this point, the Connecticut State Police troopers executed a search of the Crafts home while they're gone.
Oh, that's not very smart, Richard. You left your house.
Yeah, and what they found confirmed their suspicions while raising a dozen new questions. So in the master bedroom, they find a section of the carpet that had been cut out and removed. Not worn out, not cleaned, physically cut with probably like, what do they call, like a box cutter or something? Just a square of it cut out and removed. And they questioned the nanny, Dawn Marie Thomas, basically being like, do you know why this piece of carpet's removed? She goes, I don't know what happened, but soon before, like I just came in one day and that section of carpet was cut out. But before it was cut out, there was a dark stain right there. So, yeah. And she said this stain was roughly the size of a grapefruit. She really hadn't thought that much of it at the time when she saw the stain, but she did think it was fucking weird that he simply just cut the piece of carpet out instead of trying to clean it or like just leaving it there until he could replace the carpet entirely.
Yeah.
So on top of this, they also found a blood smear on the side of the mattress. It was low and lateral in a position that would become forensically significant. The investigators brought in this guy, Dr. Henry Lee. Now, this name means something to some of you guys listening. It means nothing to Taylor. Dr. Henry Lee is like, he is testifying like as an expert witness in all the big cases. Like John Benet Ramsey, I think he testified on, but he is one of the like foremost forensic scientists in the United States.
Oh, so they're pulling out the big guns. They got the best of the best.
Well, this is actually early on in his career, and this is kind of like, this was kind of before he was the big guns, but he becomes the big guns, and this is one of the cases that like helped him get there. But at the time, he was Connecticut's chief forensic scientist and one of the most respected figures in the area at the time. Now, Lee and his team processed the master bedroom with a thoroughness that approached the obsessive, like an obsessive level. And God bless, that's their job as forensic scientists. You should be looking at the minute details. So using a battery of chemical tests, so they did ortholidine testing, species-specific antigen analysis, luminol spraying. And with all of these tests, they identified 5 distinct blood stains nearly invisible to the naked eye, plus that blood smear on the mattress that was visible. All of this blood was confirmed to be human, and it was type O positive. Helle Crafts' blood type was O positive. Based on the location and the pattern of the blood on the mattress, that low lateral smear across the side, Lee later testified that he concluded that Helle had been kneeling or stooping at the foot of the bed when she was attacked from behind. She was not lying down on the floor or the bed at the time of the attack. It was possible, he said, that she had been changing the sheets when her husband struck her. So I would like to hope that she did not see this coming.
So he snuck up behind her.
Yes. Now, once they are doing this search, they're starting to find this evidence. The media is like kind of going crazy on this case now that it's been picked up by the Attorney General's office. And just after they execute this search warrant, a tip comes in that breaks this case open entirely. A worker named Joseph Hine said that he had been out plowing roads on the night that Helle disappeared during that same snowstorm. And that's how he knew it was that night, because it was the first night of the snowstorm. So it was easy to remember, because sometimes you look back on like witness accounts, like, did you really have the day right? How could you remember exactly what day if you didn't know that it was important? But during that snowstorm, he says that he spotted something that was out of place. A man operating a woodchipper near the shore of Lake Zor, where a bridge spans the Housatonic River between Newtown and Southbury. It was the middle of the night, in the middle of a snowstorm, and a man is operating a wood chipper, pushing it into the lake.
And nobody calls this in?
Well, he noticed it. He found it very strange, but he filed it away. He's like, that's kind of weird. It wasn't until after investigators had searched the Crafts home and Hine heard about the case through the newspaper that he came forward with what he had seen. Investigators brought Hine back to the location that he had described. They're like, can you take us to where you saw this? And what they found there along the frozen riverbank was extraordinary in the way that only true crime evidence can be extraordinary, because it was simultaneously devastating and horrific. But forensically speaking, remarkable forensic work is done here. Okay. I'm not saying this is, oh my God, how cool, but it is incredible what they do here. And it couldn't have been done. This case wouldn't be solved without it, is what I should say. But I'm going to warn you guys, what I'm about to tell you is fucking disturbing. So scattered among wood chips and river debris were small fragments of metal, and mixed in with them, they recovered nearly 3 ounces of human tissue. Working methodically in conditions that were cold and difficult, because remember, this is like late December or early January that they're doing this, the forensic team recovered more than 2,660 strands of bleached blonde hair, just like Helle's. They found chips of human bones. They found a fingernail painted with pink polish. They found a dental crown. The blood type in the tissue samples was O positive, Helle's blood type. And then, submerged in the river water below the bridge, they recovered parts of a chainsaw. The serial number had been carefully scratched off, but investigators were able to restore it in the lab. They traced it to the retailer where it had been sold, and they confirmed that Richard Crafts had purchased this chainsaw. Among the wood chips and the debris on the riverbank, investigators found a partially shredded envelope that clearly showed the return address label, Miss Helle Crafts, 5 Newtown Lane, Newtown, Connecticut. The dental crown was matched to Helle's dental records by forensic odontologist Gus Carrizoulas. And that piece of evidence, a crown from her tooth, was enough to say definitively that we have found the body of Helle Crafts. And on January 13th, 1987, the Connecticut State Medical Examiner's Office issued a death certificate for Helle. Richard Crafts was arrested the same day with a bond set at $750,000. Now, if you're thinking that's pretty damning evidence of all of this,
Yeah.
it's damning evidence that her body was put through a fucking wood chipper and was in that river. But is it evidence that he did it? I guess we connected the chainsaw to him, but if someone went into their home and took Helle, could they have taken the chainsaw? Don't worry, because the credit card statements really piece this all together nicely.
When did he buy it?
Credit card records, they really show the rest of the story in cold transactional detail. He had bought new bed sheets and a comforter days after Helle went missing, presumably to replace the ones that were no longer usable. The day before Helle disappeared, he purchased a large chest freezer capable of holding upwards of 200 pounds. This freezer was not found in the house during the search, and to this day has never been found.
Wait, you're saying he bought this before he killed her?
The day before she disappeared. So yeah, the day before he killed her. The day after he killed her, the day after she disappeared, he rented a U-Haul truck from a company called Bush Bandit. And in addition to this U-Haul, because it was not the only thing he rented, he also rented a 4,000-pound industrial scale wood chipper. He did so using his own name and credit card.
Richard's not very smart.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he filing off the serial number of the chainsaw and like a lot of this, very smart, evil smart, but smart. This dummy.
Yeah.
I think he was just so sure of himself that they were never going to find her body that he wasn't even fucking worried about it. He thought he was like an evil genius. Mm-hmm. So investigators now had a theory of the crime, one that they would prove at trial. They believed that Richard struck Helle in the head with a blunt instrument on the night of November 18th, leaving blood on the carpet that he later removed and on the mattress that he later planned to replace but never got to it, apparently.
Maybe he couldn't find the right carpet yet.
Yeah. He then placed her body in the chest freezer, which he had purchased days earlier, and waited until she was frozen solid, which investigators believed was his method of preventing the mess and physical difficulty that comes with dismembering a body. They believe he then used the chainsaw to cut her apart. He loaded her remains into the rented woodchipper and drove to the bridge over the Housatonic River in the middle of a snowstorm at midnight. He then ran the dismembered parts of his wife's body, of the mother of his children's body, through the woodchipper and into the river, believing that this combination of the weather, the river, and the sheer thoroughness of the destruction of the mother of his children's body would make it impossible to prove that she was dead. And guess what, guys? He was wrong.
I'm absolutely speechless that, I mean, he left it there?
Left what there?
Like, he thought that running the wood chipper and then just the, pieces going there would go away?
I think he thought, like, it would run down the river, not realizing that some stuff is going to get caught in, whatever's floating on the river or underneath, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he thinks the river is just going to
wash it away.
Wash it away. And he's right to a certain extent. If enough time, if a year had gone by, there might have been nothing left. That's why they only found 3 ounces of tissue.
But what about the parts of the chainsaw?
Yeah, I don't know what
those aren't getting
thinking.
washed away.
Yeah, I think, but remember they found a bunch of shards of metal. Like, I think he ran the chainsaw through the fucking wood chipper. Which I'm like, did that not spark up? I don't know.
I feel like you can't run that.
I don't really know how a wood chipper works.
Not that I'm casually operating wood chippers in my free time, but.
Well, and that's the thing is this wood chipper he rented, this is not a miniature wood chipper that you bring to your house to turn a stump into mulch or something. This is you're tearing down a forest type of wood chipper. And the people at the rental company were this was an unusual thing for people to rent. They're like, oh, what do you need this for? This is a conversation topic. And he told them that, oh, I own a bunch of property. I'm trying to clear out some of the land, cutting down the trees and stuff. But this was, again, 4,000-pound industrial scale wood chipper. This is something, if someone drives by, they're going to remember it. Mm-hmm. And thank God for this Joseph Hine guy. I don't know where he was going or where he was coming from, but thank God that he was driving that night and saw this, or she probably never would have been found. And this fucker probably would have just gotten away with this, I
don't think he would have gotten away with it.
Actually, you're right, because they had already searched the house before that guy came forward. He was probably going to go down for it. But
the blood and the lies about her whereabouts.
Yeah, but it's hard to get a conviction when there's no body. To get a murder conviction with no body is very difficult. Because you could say, one blood smear on the side of the mattress, that's not enough blood to prove that she died. You could, and she lived in the house. I don't know. Well, she cut her leg and accidentally smeared it on the thing. You know what I mean? That's reasonable doubt. So that's where it's difficult. So the murder trial of Richard Crafts began in May of 1988 in New London. The venue was shifted there from Fairfield County because of the sheer intensity of the local media coverage, which once the news came out that he ran her through a wood chipper, this was sensationalized. This was the biggest story Connecticut had seen in a long time. Prosecutors Walter Flanagan and John Connolly faced a challenge that was both unprecedented and in some ways clarifying. They had no intact body, no traditional crime scene, no eyewitnesses. The entire prosecution would be built pretty much on circumstantial evidence, forensic science, and the argument that circumstances stacked high enough become proof. And at this time, there had never been a single no-body homicide case ever prosecuted in Connecticut. This is the first time they are ever putting someone on trial for homicide without a body. Because, they have
pieces of a body.
But they don't have DNA. So they have pieces of human bones, but they can't they cannot prove that they're Helle's bones.
Okay.
They have that tissue, same blood type, but they cannot prove that it is Helle's tissue.
You just have her missing and him purchasing a wood chipper. Well, not purchasing, but renting.
And that's the thing is they have enough. That's where it's this is all circumstantial evidence, right? Is the circumstances are saying it's putting him there, but they don't have a body. And so that's why this is different. This has never been done before. They do it successfully. This is the first no body homicide case ever convicted in Connecticut. But it was kind of it was setting a legal precedent at the time. And in many ways, this case, this is what forensic science was built for, was to answer these questions, to answer all of these missing pieces. Because just taking each of these things alone, it's not enough. Just looking at the bones alone, not enough to say that Richard did this, not even enough to prove that it's Helle's. But when you put the bone and the tissue and the dental crown and the chainsaw all together, that's where it's like stacking up. But Dr. Henry Lee took the stand and walked the jury through the blood evidence, the 5 near invisible stains, the lateral smear on the mattress, the analysis of the blood type and tissue characteristics that ruled out any innocent explanation. He also explained the inference about Helle's position when she was struck, that she was probably kneeling at the foot of the bed, possibly changing the sheets, and the significance of the carpet being removed afterwards. The state medical examiner H. Wayne Carver testified about a demonstration he had conducted specifically for this trial. He had obtained a pig carcass and ran it through a wood chipper of the same make and model as the one that Richard had rented. The shape of the pig's bone fragments and the marks left on them by the blades were consistent with the bone fragments recovered from the Housatonic River bank. It was a piece of forensic showmanship that was also rigorously scientific.
Ew.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining. I mean, I know he's doing it for science and to help this case, but I'm imagining him in his day off getting a pig and putting
Do you think
it through
someone drove by him doing this and was like,
let me call this in.
excuse me, officers, I'm seeing some weird shit going on
You
right
know what?
now?
I sure hope so. I sure hope that if someone sees that now, they will report it. If they see blood flying through a machine.
Here's the thing is, it was dark out, and remember, she was frozen.
Oh, right. So there's no
I don't
splatter.
know. And there were wood chips found too. So I think he was running wood through it as well. I don't really know like what it would look like. We are going to talk about, there's a movie that does this, and we're going to talk about how they made it look in the movie. I don't know if it's like actually accurate though. But the credit card receipts were also entered into evidence. The freezer, the bed sheets, the wood chipper rental laid out in timeline form so the jury could see how Richard had been shopping for the instruments of this crime in the days surrounding his wife's disappearance. The chainsaw, its serial number restored, was traced back to him. Forensic odontologist Gus Krazulas, Gus. That forensic odontologist, Gus, something with a K, testified about that dental crown. Keith Mayo testified about the affair, the photos, the private investigation that he had conducted that confirmed Helle's suspicions, and what Helle told him about, like, hey, if something happens to me, it's not an accident. Helle's friend, Rita Bonanno, testified about Helle's expressions of fear, her plans to divorce Richard, and the explicit warning she had given her and many other people. Divorce attorney Diane Anderson testified about the conversation that Helle had told her the same thing, like, something happens to me, Richard did it. So the motive was laid bare. Richard Crafts stood to lose substantially in a divorce. He was going to have to pay alimony. He was going to have to pay child support. He was going to have to divide up their assets. And Richard had reportedly made about $120,000 a year in 1986, which would be worth around $360,000 today. And he was not interested in having that income redistributed to Helle by a family court. And this is, just to go back, this is why I'm so fucking confused. Why is he taking a part-time job as a police officer?
I don't know.
He's making so much money. I don't get that. I think he's got some weird control shit. I mean, obviously he does, but I think being a cop was part of that.
Yeah, I think he just wanted another way of having control, like an authority.
Yeah. So after 54 days of trial and 17 days of deliberations, the jury came back fractured. One single juror, the only holdout in favor of acquittal, refused to continue deliberating. And on July 15th, 1988, the judge declared a mistrial. The state would have to do it all over again.
I'm sorry?
Oh, this guy, we're going to talk about this juror. This juror was a carpenter from Norwich named Warren Maskell. He was 47 years old at the time, and what he did next set off a firestorm that would echo through the Connecticut legal community for years. The jury had, at one point during deliberations, voted unanimously to convict. Because, like, if you don't know anything about jury deliberations, like, they'll do blind votes. So, like, everybody writes down, you know, guilty or not guilty or whatever. And they kind of do it as, like, a polling system to guide their conversations. But it's supposed to protect whoever, you know, let's say 10 people agree and the other 2 don't, it's supposed to protect them from like being attacked. You're not supposed to know who's voting what. And then they continue deliberations until they do a poll that comes back unanimous. So they do this poll, they vote unanimously, and Maskell had been in the majority, obviously, at this point, but then he changed his mind, a reversal that he later attributed partly to the relentless pressure from other jurors. And basically he says, I thought this guy was innocent. Then they pressured me. And then I said, okay, I'll poll and say like he's guilty because, you know, they're pressuring me. So they're pressuring him because he's the only one saying not guilty. Then he gets in this car accident while they're in the deliberations. He gets in this car accident. He breaks 2 ribs and he's having trouble sleeping and all of this stuff. And one of the other jurors tells him, quote, God is trying to tell you you're wrong, end quote, saying like, oh, you got in a car accident because God's trying to give you a sign that you're wrong. So he says this is why he then flips his vote to guilty for a minute. But then he flips it back to innocent. And
are we 100% sure it was a car accident?
I think so. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not 100% sure. But
no, I'm just wondering if there's proof that there was a car accident. He didn't like get beat up.
I don't know. But he flips to guilty for a while. Then he flips back to not guilty. And, you know, he's moving for acquittal. And he like stays that way. And he says that he was not going to change. He later, after the trial or I guess after a mistrial was declared, he did a telephone interview with a reporter and he told him, quote, and that's when the pressure really turned on. But there was no other verdict for me. If we had held out for 2 months, I would have voted the same, end quote. He said an angry juror had told him that he had 3 choices: agree with the others, stay in that room forever, or walk in and tell the judge that he couldn't make up his mind. He later said, quote, that's when I started looking at the door, end quote, meaning he was like, I'm not changing my mind and I'm not staying in this room forever. So I'm telling the judge, like, get me off of this. So on July 15th, 1988, this is when Maskell tells the judge, I'm not making a choice anymore, like whatever. And so the judge had no option but to declare this mistrial. State's attorney Walter Flanagan, visibly furious, called Maskell a coward in front of the assembled press corps, a statement that cost him an undisclosed out-of-court settlement when Maskell sued him for slander. And I'm like, can you really sue for like that? It seems like a very opinion-based statement, but Maskell said that because of this statement, he was flooded with hundreds of phone calls afterwards, most of them from people who told him things like, quote, how does it feel to let a killer go, end quote, and, quote, they ought to burn you, end quote. So,
like the Salem witch trials?
Yes. And here's the thing, guys. Do I think, in my personal opinion, Maskell is a good, smart person? I'm not completely convinced. However, this is how the system is built to work. And sometimes it's really fucking annoying how it works. But this guy, I don't know about anything he's doing in his personal life, but I'm just saying, based off this, that is supposed to be his job, is to form his own opinion based on the evidence that he sees at trial and stick to it and not let the other jurors sway him. That's his job. He did his job. Do I agree with his opinion? No. Not at all. But we don't need to threaten to burn the man alive.
Yeah, no, that's a bit much, I'd say.
It's a bit much. But I will say I'm fucking perplexed why he thought this guy is not guilty. And he says in a later interview, he says, quote, I don't just think that they failed to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't think Richard Crafts killed his wife, end quote. So he's not even saying like, oh, I'm just saying that they don't have enough evidence, but like he probably did it, but it's a reasonable doubt thing. He's saying this man didn't do it.
No, we need to look into this guy more. Where does he get off saying that he doesn't think that he did it?
And again, that's his right. That's his job. I'm not understanding from what information he has formed such an opinion, but also I haven't read all the details of, I didn't read every word of every testimony of this trial. So to each their own, but it's an interesting conclusion to come to based on the limited information that I have read. A very interesting conclusion. That's what I'll say. And I will just say, for the record, did not call this man a coward. Don't sue me. Don't sue me. So the defense, for its part, had not made things easy for the prosecution. I will give him that. Richard's attorney, J. Daniel Sagarin, argued that throughout both trials, the evidence had no integrity. And he basically said that the evidence had been planted or tampered with. He explained, quote, for Helle's return address labels to show up at a place where her body parts were found after a search of the house, I will go to my grave thinking that evidence was planted. So basically he's saying it's much too convenient for her name and address and everything to be found with all of her body parts.
Maybe he was dumping the clothes that she was wearing and she had some mail in her pocket or something, like a folded piece of paper.
And this was where it was written on the envelope this was the return address. So this was something she was mailing out. So was this a letter to someone? Was this some legal paperwork about the divorce saying he has this affair and whatever? Like, was this evidence of something Richard had done wrong in the marriage or whatever that he was trying to get rid of with her body?
I mean, yeah, we know Richard's not very smart, so he thought it was going to be fully ripped up.
Well, and that's what's so funny is like the defense's whole argument is like, oh, having this much evidence is just too convenient. And they say, you know, they're accusing of the evidence, like they're accusing the police of planting evidence, basically.
The police who are his friends.
Well, by this point, the Attorney General's office had taken over the investigation. But they're saying that this is all planted because it's just too convenient and too obvious. It's like, okay, maybe he's just dumb, you know?
I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, in my opinion. Now, if you ask Maskell, for sure, Richard is too smart for this and the police probably, and I'm putting words in his mouth. He didn't actually say that. I don't know his opinion on if the police planted evidence. I'm just making a joke. But yeah, so he says that, and this is the defense attorney, Daniel Sagarin, J. Daniel Sagarin, and he says that he was particularly troubled by the chainsaw, and his concern centered around, like, not just the chainsaw itself, but how police found it in the first place. So there is an article that was put out in January 1987 by the Newtown Bee, and it documented that state police were diving for evidence under the Silver Bridge when Sergeant Daniel Lewis said a, quote, unidentified source had alerted them to, quote, something in the river. And Lieutenant Edward Daly confirmed at the scene that police had been, quote, tipped off. So they're saying there's a source, we're getting tipped off, and whatever. But then later in court at trial, both of these men, Sergeant Daniel Lewis and Lieutenant Edward Daly, they denied that any source had helped them find the chainsaw. They said there was no tip. They just found it while they were searching. But this newspaper article said that someone had tipped them off that there was a chainsaw and whatever, and that they need to go look for it. Is this just misreporting? Is this just a reporter getting the facts wrong? Or do they have their stories mixed up because there was no tip because the police had put the chainsaw there?
Oh.
To frame Richard, because they had already been at the house searching before they found all, like, this scene where her body was. So did they take the chainsaw from the house, file off the serial number to make it look like he was trying to hide evidence, and throw it in the river to connect Richard to this? Because there was nothing found in the river itself that really connected Richard. It could have been someone else who had done this, even though it proved it was Helle's body. Mm-hmm. I say silly theory because the police had the fucking credit card statements showing that Richard rented the fucking wood chipper.
That's what I was going to say. I'm like, did they also take his credit card and go make all these purchases?
That's what I don't get. Like, the thing is I see Richard's evil thought process here of like, wood chipper, no body. They'll never find her. They'll never find out what I did. But once you find wood chipped parts of a woman and then credit card statements of her husband renting a wood chipper, I mean, nail in the coffin for you, Richard. Like, I don't that would be no reasonable doubt left in my mind, pretty much. Like, unless, I don't know, unless there's camera footage and the person doing the rental doesn't look like Richard. But that's just insane. So to me, this is silly. You don't need, in my mind, there is no reasonable doubt, even if you take the chainsaw out of the equation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I mean, obviously the pieces aren't as small as Richard thought they were going to be, so they found a whole fingernail.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, because like a wood chipper, I'm pretty sure just creates like mulch. So to me, that's like, you could find, you're gonna see that this is bone and stuff, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. So Sagarin's whole argument is that there's reasonable doubt. There's reasonable doubt. There's reasonable doubt. There's reasonable doubt. And I'm sure that getting this mistrial like gave them a bit of like confidence in their case. And the second trial opened on September 7th, 1989. And again, it was moved outside of Fairfield County because of all the media sensation. But this time it was moved to Norwalk because I can't remember off the top of my head the other city that it was in before. But at that point, because the trial had happened there, now the media sensationalized in that area too. So they're trying to make sure that he has a fair trial. And this time, this trial, the whole case, everything, it's covered by all of the biggest media outlets in the US. The New York Times, the Boston Globe, People Magazine, even Danish newspapers are like traveling to Connecticut to cover this trial. And there's television programs, including A Current Affair. So the more time goes on, the fact that there was even a mistrial, that just blows it up more. So at this point, finding an impartial jury anywhere in Connecticut was a challenge. But the courts took this very seriously. The second trial was pretty much a replay of the first. Like, they don't seem to change their theories or arguments. The same witnesses testified. The same damning evidence implicated Richard Crafts as he sat at the defense table, seemingly unmoved by the proceedings. When the case finally went to the jury on November 20th, it took only 8 hours to reach a unanimous verdict this time. 8 hours. After the first jury had spent 17 days tearing itself apart over the same evidence and the same testimony.
I'm still trying to figure out how.
I think it was really just that one guy was like really holding out. And again, that was his job, was to form his own opinion and to stick to it and not let the other jurors sway him. And he did what he was asked, you know? Mm-hmm. I don't understand it, but he did what he was asked. Okay. So one juror said after, so this is from the second jury, obviously, he said, quote, Richard Crafts could not have asked for a more fair jury. The totality of the evidence was overwhelming, end quote. So the point is they're saying, we went in with an open mind. We went in looking for reasonable doubt. We presumed him innocent, but the totality of the evidence was overwhelming and there was no reasonable doubt for us. Therefore, he is guilty. He is found guilty, and he showed no emotion when the verdict was announced. Cool, calm, collected. Never clenching those cheeks, you know what I mean? Beating that polygraph. So on November 21st, 1989, almost exactly 3 years to the day since Helle's murder, Richard Crafts was found guilty. And yes, I did just say that in the last two sentences, and I'm just throwing it in for a third time. But in January of 1990, he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. He remained unrepentant and defiant throughout, and the judge noted his complete absence of remorse for the record, because he still said, I didn't do it. I don't know what happened. It wasn't me. But this case had made legal history. It was the first murder conviction in Connecticut secured without the discovery of the victim's body. The conviction rested entirely on a dental crown, bone chips, hair, a fingernail, a chainsaw serial number, and a credit card receipt for a wood chipper. It was the first time many people in the legal world truly understood what forensic evidence, applied carefully and completely, could accomplish. Now, Richard Crafts served only 32 years of his 50-year sentence. He was released on January 30th, 2020, at the age of 82, under a provision of Connecticut law in effect at the time of his conviction that allowed sentences to be shortened through a combination of good behavior and prison work credits. And I say, stupid ass fucking rule.
Yeah, why? Why him?
He should have died in prison, in my opinion. What he did to this woman was fucking heinous.
Yeah, for crimes like that, I don't think there should be a good behavior clause.
I agree. Murdering your wife and the mother of your 3 children, freezing her body until it is frozen solid, chopping her up with a chainsaw, and running her dismembered body parts through a wood chipper. Oh, but you behaved really well in prison.
And you had work credits.
And you worked so hard for the prison industrial complex here in the United States, because we have a for-profit prison system, which is in and of itself an insane fucking thing to do. But you worked really hard for the millionaires that own these prisons. We're going to let you out early?
No way.
No, I don't fuck with that.
No.
We talk a lot about on the podcast, what is the purpose of imprisoning people? Is it for punishment, or is it to protect the public. And I think it's both to a certain extent. Do I think this 82-year-old man is a threat to the public? Probably not. Maybe, probably not. He's probably not going to hurt anybody else. You know, this is a very specific reason that he murdered this woman. But in my opinion, part of the reason for imprisoning people is not just about protecting the public. It is for punishment.
Yeah.
And even when you go back to protecting the public, I think part of protecting the public is setting a precedent that you cannot get away with these things. And I think letting this man out early, it doesn't set the right example.
No, it doesn't.
At all. It doesn't set the right example at all. And I think he deserved to die in prison for what he did to this woman. I think he deserved that sort of punishment. And I think it's a shame that he was let out and that, you know, he's probably not the only one that was let out, did something heinous and was let out early because of that rule.
Well, I do agree with there being a clause like that. I'm not saying they should get rid of it, but I think there should be stipulations on extremely violent criminals, you know, people that murder their wives shouldn't be able to, you know, qualify for that.
I agree. There needs to be very detailed guidelines of like when this can apply and when it can't. Like, okay, someone like, let's say teenage boy, father's been beating him up his whole life, beating up his mom. Teenage boy has enough, beats up the father, kills him, shoots the father, whatever. Okay, let that kid get out early if he has good behavior because whatever. But like this is some evil, evil shit.
Yeah, and like you were saying that even like during the case that he didn't seem remorseful or like upset about the, you know, death of his wife. Even if he didn't do it, did he seem to be like, you know, distressed about where his wife was?
He's taken the kids on vacation to Florida when she's been missing for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, are you fucking kidding me? It's just actually insanity to me. And like, I think that I just don't understand why they would ever. And again, you know, I'm sure that the people who actually had to process this whole thing of letting him out, I'm sure they were not happy to do this. I think this is something that at that point they didn't have a choice. That was the law, and that's what the law said that they had to do, and you have to do it. But I just think that's insanity, and I hope that has changed. But this case has been featured. This case has been, I think, sensationalized, not just in true crime, but also in like movies and shows. But let's start with talking about true crime. So this case was actually the first case ever featured on Forensic Files. So this is episode 1 of Forensic Files. Taylor probably never seen Forensic Files.
I have not.
Okay. There's this channel back when we didn't all just have 17 streaming services. There was this channel, HLN. I don't know that they had another show that went on that channel. Forensic Files, I swear to God, was on 24 hours a day. And it was 30-minute episodes about true crime cases. And obviously it focuses on forensic science. This is what got me into, like, I started when I was probably a kid. Like, I'm telling you, like 12, 13. I saw CSI Miami for the first time and I said, I'm going to solve murders when I get older. Ooh. Then I like got to the age where I started to realize the reality of stuff. And I was like, never mind. I don't want to do that. But all the CSI shows, then I found Forensic Files. Man, dude, the way that would run in my house was insane. The first episode of Forensic Files aired in April of 1996, and the show would run for 14 seasons, introducing forensic science to millions of American living rooms. And this is really, to me, Forensic Files, and you guys, obviously I was very young at this time. I was born in 1996, so like I wasn't fully, on the true crime train at that time, but in my mind, like Forensic Files was the start of true crime content when it came to like shows and stuff. And it's really like grown from there. But yeah, this is episode 1. And the producers of the show, I think, understood this case, that, the fact that more than almost any other case, this case demonstrated the transformative potential of the field. And it's interesting to think about how far we've come since Forensic Files first started to now. It's not running anymore, but it is still talked about all the time in true crime circles. And the advancements we've made since Forensic Files started 30 years ago, right? Yep, 30 years ago. It's actually insane. Like, remember I was saying mid-90s, like 96, this is just when DNA is first starting. Now we're catching killers because their cousin's brother, sister's uncle
Right.
has submitted DNA to a ancestry service, not ancestry.com. They don't give your DNA away to like, they won't let the police take it, whatever. But there are some that, you can basically donate your DNA in case anyone you are tangentially related to has been implicated in a crime.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy, though, that a sibling of yours could have to give DNA and then they could connect you that way.
Yeah, it is. It is. And people there, that's how they caught the Golden State Killer, I'm pretty sure. And that was a serial killer and his crimes were unsolved for such a long time. And he was caught because of, I think, every time I say this, I feel like I'm saying the wrong thing. Genetic genealogy, which it always feels wrong because it sounds redundant to me, genetic genealogy. But it's basically like genetic relationships between individuals and tracing ancestry. And so someone in this person's family had given DNA and they were able to trace it back and catch the Golden State Killer. Like, this was some wild shit.
I mean, that's absolutely amazing, though.
It is amazing. And it's only getting more progressive. And that's why a lot of these crimes that I think now are unsolved, even from decades ago, if the evidence was preserved properly, I think a lot of these cold cases are going to be solved by evidence and the problem is because they didn't know the potential of forensic science, a lot of the evidence probably wasn't preserved properly. But I remember reading about a case in Hawaii, and I'm so sorry, I can't remember the victim's name, but a teenage girl was murdered in Hawaii. Her case was unsolved for 48 years. And then they did DNA testing and they solved it. And I think the guy had already died at that point who did it. But that's some wild shit. 48 years later, they're catching killers because of DNA,
I'm just imagining them snatching a bunch of elderly patients out of nursing homes and putting them in jail.
Yeah. Dude, imagine you're visiting your grandma at a nursing home and, that prick, what did we say? Weird Uncle John?
Yeah.
Weirdo Uncle John?
Her neighbor.
Another Springfield 3 callback. That's next to your mom's room. They're like, yeah, this guy, we think he murdered 30 people,
Mm-hmm. They're like, old John next door, he's so nice,
Yeah. Back to this story. I don't know how we got to nursing homes. So sorry. Tangent. But it wasn't just true crime that this case was featured on. So the special edition DVD. Have you ever seen Fargo?
No.
The movie Fargo? Okay. The movie Fargo contains a scene where it's basically like the film's, this is the climax of the entire movie, is this scene. And there's a character played by Steve Buscemi, my fucking boy, and he meets his end in a wood chipper. They put him in a wood chipper. And I haven't watched this movie in so long, I can't remember. I think he was alive. Someone's correct me on that. I can't remember if he was alive or dead yet in the movie, but they put him in a wood chipper. And the special edition DVD of this film, which was put out in 1996 by the Coen brothers, this DVD edition contained an explicit acknowledgement that the Crafts case was the inspiration for this scene. And in the scene, it's very graphic of, his remains are being projected in a red mist over a frozen Minnesota landscape. I don't know that giving acknowledgement to the Crafts case was really necessary.
Probably not.
I don't know if you needed to credit them in some way. You know what I mean? There's certain things where you're like, let's say you're making art inspired by another artist. You're like, credit to this person for inspiring me to make this 3D ice cream cone. I don't know. But I feel as if it may be better to just keep these unconnected when you're making this really shocking, gory, horrific scene. And this is something that actually happened to someone.
Yeah, just let people make their own connections on stuff like that.
Yeah, and no hate to the people who I don't understand the purpose behind it. Maybe I'm missing something there. People will always be interested in horror and all of that kind of thing. I think the people who write it, whatever, they're going to take inspiration from real things. It's like Law and Order SVU is pretty much all based off real cases.
Which as an adult, I was disturbed to learn that.
Yeah, but I don't know that we need to be this is about this. Now have so much fun watching the show. I don't know. It's hard to say, but then you could say the same thing about what we're doing here. I don't know.
Yeah, but you don't credit the case.
Yeah, I just don't know how I would feel about that. If her children are probably like my parents' age or younger than my parents. And this happened to their mother at their father's hands. And now one of the most famous movies out there, Fargo, is like, I don't know. I just feel like I don't think I would feel good about that. But I also don't think that like the people who did it had like bad intentions. I don't know.
No, I don't.
Because it's not like they made it about her.
Yeah, I don't think they had bad intentions with doing it. I just think maybe it wasn't tasteful.
Yeah. So
actually, I'm pretty sure there is I don't know if it's Criminal Minds or NCIS, one of those. I think there may be an episode that's heavily inspired by this case. I feel like I've seen it.
Okay. Are you a Criminal Minds fan?
Oh, I love Criminal Minds.
Taylor, how do I not know this about you? See, I never liked NCIS that much, but Criminal Minds, oh my God. Dr. Spencer Reed.
I was just going to say that.
The love of my motherfucking life. The love of my life.
Everything.
Love of my life. Okay, so I know we're getting off track. We're whatever, but I want to bring it home because I think this case is like, it's so horrific in such a unique way that I almost think it's human nature to like kind of disconnect from what's happening here. We don't want to imagine a human being being disposed of in this way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what really sticks with me about this whole thing is, what happened to her, what was done to her after she died is horrific. But I think what happened to her leading up to her death was almost more horrific in a way because she saw this coming. She had said it very plainly to her friends, to her attorney, to the PI, to anyone that would listen. If something happens to me, don't assume it was an accident. The warnings were on the record. The abuse was visible enough that her friends noticed it. And still, the local police, when she was reported missing, they just filed the paperwork. They just sat back and waited for her to turn up. And she did not get justice because the system moved swiftly to protect her. She got justice because the people who loved her refused to stop making noise, because her friends are ride or die bitches, and because a private investigator would not let this go. And because the public got up in arms with them, and the case was eventually passed above the local police. But I think this is a case where the institution failed her, but her people did not. But we don't have, I think, the detailed accounts of what was really going on inside that house. We know a little bit from what she told her friends, but I think what was probably going on inside that home, was horrific. She was obviously scared for her life. Obviously, what was done to her remains after she was gone, horrific. But for Helle, what was happening to her while she was still alive, is like even more horrific in a way. And that's the thing, is what I was saying to Taylor earlier. Like, this is not the first case where we hear about domestic violence and they are saying they're scared for their lives and their lives are taken. And that's what I think this story is like. It's all about woodchipper, woodchipper, woodchipper. And yes, that's a horrific piece. And I think the whole, legal precedence of prosecuting a no-body homicide, very important. The forensic science, very impressive in this case, very important. But I also think this is truly at its core, this is a story of domestic violence that has been sensationalized. And that's a point I kind of wanted to bring the story home with, is this case is not about the forensic science. It's not about the wood chipper. Those are all tangential. The real core of the story is this is a case of domestic violence. So if you or anyone you know is struggling, you're in a violent relationship, someone you love is in a violent relationship, I've got some resources for you. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233, or you can text START to 88788. They have a chat available at thehotline.org. It's available 24/7 and completely confidential. We've got the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, which is ncadv.org. We've got loveisrespect.org. This is basically an organization focused on dating abuse, which is for younger people, teenagers, early 20s, trying to understand what a healthy relationship looks like. You can text Love Is to 22522, or you can call at 1-866-331-9474. Now, if you are in a position where you are feeling stuck for legal reasons, stuck in a marriage, stuck with children, whatever it may be, you can go to womenslaw.org. They basically provide legal information and resources specifically for abuse survivors, including state-by-state guidance. And we can also look at Futures Without Violence. The website is just futureswithoutviolence.org. And this is really for abuse survivors trying to move forward after exiting an abusive relationship. So, with that being said, I think court is adjourned for the day.
Bye.
Bye.
Mom, can you tell me a story?
Sure. Once upon a time, a mom needed a new car.
Was she brave?
She was tired, mostly. But she went to Carvana.com and found a great car at a great price. No secret treasure map required.
Did you have to fight a dragon?
Nope, she bought it 100% online. From her bed, actually.
Was it scary?
Honey, it was as unscary as car buying could be.
Did the car have a sunroof?
It did, actually.
Okay, good story.
Car buying you'll want to tell stories about. Buy your car today on
Carvana.
Delivery fees may apply.